Okay, we are talking about fear versus peace. And when I typically do videos like this, I don't plan things ahead of time. I kind of gather my thoughts, take a deep breath, and tune into my intuition. And I just kind of go with the flow, and see what comes up. What I felt like doing was looking up the definition online of what fear is and what peace is, and I'm going to dissect the proper definition, and then I'm going to compare them. I looked up fear, and fear's definition, according to dictionary.com, is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat. And the verb format is to be afraid. Being afraid of someone or something as likely to be dangerous, painful, or threatening. Is there like any other definition? I mean, that's so vague. That doesn't even begin to describe what fear is like to live in it. And of course, it makes sense that I'm not gonna like fully detail the influence of fear on someone's life online, because a lot of things in the media do promote fear and do promote a lot of the negative emotions. So, let me do a little snippet as to what it's like to live in fear, live with fear. One, it's not living. It is being on extra hard mode at all times, and everything is an obstacle to you, and everything causes you distress, everything causes you, like, I cannot count how many times that I had a panic attack in the most strange places, and it comes from fear. And fear is more than just an unpleasant emotion. Fear, when you're in it and when you're in it deep enough, it dictates your entire life. It's no longer an emotion, it's a lifestyle. And so is peace. Peace is a lifestyle as well, living in peace, releasing fear. But when you live in fear, it can be hard to escape it. I had the benefit of being able to escape it at a young age, is because fear isn't necessarily being afraid of someone or something. It can just be an energy. Like, you just don't like it and it scares you. It could be confrontation. It can be just going and sleeping in an unknown place. It's deeper than this definition. And living in a state of fear was the hardest thing for me because I grew up in it. To kind of summarize a little bit my story, because if you want to hear more about it, you'll check out the podcast. But I lived in it for over 10 years, over a decade. Phobia got bad when I was 7, or when I was 6.5, but the fear, living in a state of fear, having high anxiety and paranoia started off at an early age. It was like a flip of a switch. I was okay. My phobia was of dogs, so not anymore. Gotta keep saying those affirmations. So I went from wanting to go and cuddle a little chihuahua walking in the park to climbing a tree to escape a tiny dog, when I cannot climb anything. I can't even climb a rock wall, but all of a sudden I got scared and I kind of jumped on a tree to escape like a Pomeranian. So that shift is a change in lifestyle. It's not just an emotion. You can't live, because the way that you would typically go about your daily life changes when you're living in a state of fear. And it can be permanent if you don't do something about it. And I went to counselors, I went to therapists, nothing worked. Literally nothing worked. It only started to get better when I started healing it myself through meditation and Reiki. Not one therapist helped me get over my phobia. They tried. Not one. Not one. If anything, I feel like my phobia got worse when I had it. Not one therapist, not one counselor got me over feeling fearful or having anxiety. Not one. I did that for myself. I did that thanks to a Reiki healer giving me the space to do it myself. I did that by balancing my own chakras. I had to make that change myself, because just sitting and talking about something, while it can be helpful, did nothing for me. I had to change my lifestyle. I had to consciously be in control of it, and I had to do it myself because there are some things that you can't talk about with other people because you might be worried what they might think, but you can talk about it with yourself. And when I started dealing with it with myself, then I started turning to other people once I was already working on it myself. But when I was in the middle of it, and I was also in the middle of some other unpleasant things, no outside person would have helped me. And even now, if I was still in it now, no outside person would have helped me, because when you're living in a state of fear and you want to switch to a state of peace, it has to be your decision, and you have to sit with your thoughts and relive your own memories and pinpoint when things went wrong. You have to dissect your own life and just rip it apart and figure out what went wrong and heal yourself. You have to do that work. You have to sit and write down, take note. You have to come up with little mantras, things to say. You have to be conscious and aware of what you're doing at all times. It is about present moment awareness, because when you're living in a state of fear, you are not living in the present moment, because you're always fearful of what is going to happen, what could happen. And one very special thing about me is that I had this high manifestation thing, and everybody does, especially if you're in a state of fear, where I didn't want to see dogs, or I didn't want to see a specific thing or a specific person, and I would end up manifesting more of them than would make sense. I would go to places on the one day that they would allow dogs, like to nurseries. I would end up in places where dogs were everywhere. I'd end up in places where service dogs were everywhere. I would end up in places where fake service dogs. Yes, people would fake that their dog was a service dog, and then it would start going ballistic in the store. And I would happen to be in there at those points because I was so focused on it not happening that I made it happen. And that's living in a state of fear, because I wasn't in the present moment, and I was so worried about it that I was essentially telling the universe that I want it to happen. Like some of the stories, and you'll hear in the podcast, very fun stories, that you can't make that stuff up, and it happens because I was not in the present moment. I was living in fear, and when you're living in fear, you are constantly worrying about the future or the past, but you're never in the present moment. Never. And fear is the death of a soul. Fear is what pulls you down into the negative polarity. I've talked about on the podcast in Highs and Lows how the 7 deadly sins concept can be applied to your spiritual growth. Fear isn't in there. Manipulation isn't in there. But fear and manipulation is how the negative polarity can get you to feel those emotions, get you to feel jealousy, get you to feel prideful, greedy. It can get you to feel those things, get you to feel angry. Because a lot of people who don't want to admit that they're living in a state of fear tend to be angry and tend to be jealous of people who can just go about the rest of their life normally. I know I was a little kid. I was 9 years old playing on the playground, and I was jealous of the kids who had a dog. I was jealous of the kids who were able to live and not be afraid every second of their life. I was jealous of the girls who had a good relationship with their father, and their father wasn't trying to manipulate them or abuse them. That's what I was. I became jealous and envious of those people, and I was sending them negativity. And it wasn't my fault or their fault that I was living in that state of fear, or that I didn't have a good relationship with my biological father. It was nobody's fault. It happened. But I was sending out negativity, I was getting negativity in return, and then I kept seeing all these things I was afraid of, and it's this full cycle that has such a negative impact on your life. And as a kid, when we are closest to our souls and we're still developing and understanding humanity, being manipulated by fear is what makes us feel like when we go searching for our soul, or when we go searching for enlightenment, or when we go searching for anything, that we're crazy, that we're this, that we're that, because our soul gets quieted at a young age. And when you give the ego control at such a young age, that's fundamental. The brain development is fundamental. So by the time you reach 30, 40 years old, and you've been living in that lifestyle since you were 9 years old, it becomes harder to break away from it. And living in a state of fear is not fun. And it's so much deeper than just a little emotion. Okay? Because I vaguely remember any moments where I was not in a state of fear as a kid. And it was about more than that because it started to branch away. I was in that negative dimension. I was in that negative frequency of being fearful. So then fear started to present itself in different ways. I started to become paranoid about different things. And then more bad things started to happen. And I was radiating in that frequency that I started to become afraid of a lot more things. And I started to have weird paranoia. I literally just had an intrusive thought right now that people are going to think that I'm crazy talking about this. That's the ego trying to do what it always does and shut you down from speaking your truth and shut you down from escaping the negative polarity. Okay, so peace, the definition of peace. Let's see. Define peace. So peace as a noun has a lot of different has a lot of different meanings. Peace, freedom from disturbance, tranquility, a state or period in which there is no war or a war has ended. Used as a friendly greeting, used as an order to remain silent, a verb for leave, like peace out. This is really what we define peace as. A period without war. I mean, yeah, that's a peaceful time. Don't get me wrong. But at least the definition for fear had more substance to it. Something you could work with more. But freedom from disturbance. Peace is so much more than that. It's so much deeper than that too. I had things in front of me distracting me. Peace is so much more than that too. It's like, I just kicked the tripod. Anyway, just get distracted sometimes. This is what happens when you don't have a setup plan, but it's okay. Peace is, you can't put it into a definition because, again, it's a lifestyle. And when you're living in a more peaceful lifestyle, you're not necessarily going to have it easy all the time, but when you're living in a peaceful lifestyle, you're typically living in the present moment. That's the difference. So future, fear. Present, peace. See what I did there? Okay. So peace is you're living in the present. You're living in the present moment awareness, and you are happy most of the time. You feel tranquil. You're not living in a state of fear. It is the opposite of living in a state of fear. Yeah, I guess when you're thinking of it of a period of time when there is no war or a war has ended, it is peaceful because fear, anger, and the negative polarity is not controlling the entire world or country or wherever anymore. When you think about the period of time after World War I or World War II where there was that brief moment of peace, it was like a breath of fresh air because the entire world could just take a break from constantly fighting, constantly being trapped in the negative polarity. Living in the negative polarity can be so draining to your peace, to your personal peace. And peace is different for anyone. For me, peace can just be simply sitting here, talking about my opinions, sharing my truth, and working on stuff, working on my book. Sometimes what brings me peace when I was having really bad anxiety would be taking photos of things. Not like I was a good photographer or anything, but it brought me peace and it helped me shift to the present moment. I sell online on Poshmark. The app, Poshmark, the app. So when I'm taking photos and I'm listing all this stuff that we just have a surplus of things that we don't necessarily need everything. So when I'm doing that, it gives me a state of peace. When something sells, it gives me a brief moment of peace. It's like, okay, it's going to somebody who's going to use it. And I like to think of fun little cute stories of how it may be bringing them peace in some way, bringing them happiness, bringing them joy. And you just think of it in those ways, and it's different for everyone. Totally different. Sometimes my peace is driving my car at night looking at the stars. Sometimes my peace is going to the beach. Sometimes my peace is going to the conference that I'm going to be going to soon. And it's not necessarily a quiet place. And, things can go wrong, but it brings me peace. It's my second home. It's like I grew up in that camp, and it brings me peace. So different for everyone, and peace isn't always just quiet. It's just whatever keeps you in the present moment and whatever keeps you happy and whatever keeps you in the positive polarity. It's literally whatever keeps you in the positive polarity. You're not going to be feeling peaceful when you're in a traffic jam. I mean, I know my mom likes to say whenever she's in like stuck in traffic, she just does more affirmations. She takes some time to do self-reflection, and she actually doesn't get stressed out by it for the most part. So, I mean, sometimes it can be a good thing, but other times you'll be pretty stressed out about it, and so it can be hard to be peaceful in that moment, even though you are kind of in the present moment, but you're also so worried about not getting somewhere on time. So a lot of living in peace and living away from fear is giving up that control, loosening your grip on the universe and just trusting. Like the biggest thing for me is just having faith. Like when I went to Chicago and Niagara Falls, and I went to some places after like I'm like specifically saying where because those places are pretty crowded and there are dogs there. So this is a very interesting story because I went to those places while I was still in the process of releasing said phobia, which wasn't that long ago when you think about it, like 10 months ago about. So when I went there, previously when I'd gone to both places, and it was like purposeful why I went there, because when I went to both places, both times I had a panic attack about dogs, and I was with some people who would get pretty angry when I would get a little fearful, no matter what age I was at. So when we went back, instead of being, I had a little moment, before I got out of the car, before we started walking to the falls, like I had a little moment, and then I just took a deep breath. And I reasserted my faith to the universe, and I lived in the present moment. There were some moments where I was like, but also some moments where I was realizing that why I was feeling so off balance wasn't because of said animal. It was because there were so many people. So the minute I realized that what was knocking me off balance had nothing to do with the animal was probably feeling what I was feeling, which was overwhelmed by the amount of people and the noises and all the chaos going on. So if anything, me and those dogs were in the same boat. We were both feeling overwhelmed. So I took that piece of like changing my perspective, and I felt peaceful. And it was a completely different experience than when I went there 5 years prior, because when I went there 5 years prior, it doesn't matter how long, but when I went there a pretty decent long time ago for the first time, and I was all over the place, it was chaotic, and I was fearful, but I let it go. Like, I remember when I went there, I didn't want to go up to the highest level of like one of the fall things where you would get like dropped on water, and because it's like really high up, and I was feeling fearful about that, and I just had no hesitation this time. I was feeling peaceful. I was feeling very connected. I tuned into the water. I went on there for the whole purpose that Niagara Falls is a portal. And nothing. I easily walked past most dogs. Like, I was in the present moment because I realized that I was there for myself. I wasn't there to worry about what's going on everywhere else. I'm there for me, and that's living in peace. Same with Chicago. You go there are occasionally dogs, and I'd been there a decent amount of times. So when I went there and I was wanting to remove those imprints of fear, those little ley lines of fear, I just took some deep breaths, and it was this, I trust them. I trust the dog group. So I remember because I saw a German Shepherd. Okay, I remember the dog breed, which is oddly specific, but important in some aspects. I remember that moment. I saw it, and I was just like, I trust you. And I went about the rest of my day. And I started like taking photos of things, and I took deep breaths, and I realized, I'm feeling overwhelmed because there's so many people. And then started focusing on the little things, on each individual flower, on each individual thing, really stopping to smell the roses, really taking a deep breath and just sitting down and looking at what was in front of me. And that is how you shift your perspective, and you start to live in a state of peace. And that's also how the universe tests you with fear. And so with peace, it's just not living in fear, not living in those negative emotions. It's so peaceful for me to be able to wake up in the morning and not have to worry about, what does my hair look like? What do my eyebrows look like? What am I going to wear? Blah, 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 blah. Like, it is so peaceful for me to just wake up in the morning and be comfortable in who I am and not try to please my ego by changing everything about how I look to please other people. Like, that feels peaceful. That's what peace, that definition is, I mean, freedom of disturbance. I guess it is, it's freedom, but really what it's freedom from is negativity. It's just living in that positive frequency. Like, what brings me peace is even when I do Russian oracle card readings, for example, and I get like a warning about something, that still brings me peace. Even though it's not necessarily a positive message, it brings me peace because I know that it's not going to happen right now, but I'm aware of it and it's okay and I can prepare for it. I can do what I need to do, but I'm not going to be lingering in it. You know, if it'll happen, and I am in control of what my vibration is at. That affects how bad it is. If you're radiating at a higher dimensional frequency and you're staying in the positive polarity, if something bad is coming your way, it's not going to be as bad, or even like it'll be like just a minor disturbance as opposed to a big disturbance because you're radiating at a higher frequency. And so those negative things that would typically set you off aren't going to set you off anymore. That's a huge, huge difference. Let's see if there is anything online about fear versus peace. Let's see. Interesting. Fear. So the godofthebible.org. Fear is eliminated when you know that love is the principle that everyone follows, because love does no harm to a neighbor. Okay, interesting. I mean, there are different interpretations of that verse specifically, but I do like that it definitely shows that love brings peace. True, unconditional, divine, cosmic love brings peace, because when you're radiating in the love frequency and the light frequency, you feel at peace because you're not dropped down to that negativity like fear. You're not being pulled down by fear. You're being held up by peace, by love, by joy, by positivity. When you're in the positive polarity, you can never have too much of it. You never have too much positivity. Anybody that tells you that you're too positive or you're too peaceful, okay, that's their opinion. But being able to live in that state in a world like this and still, not being ignorant about anything either. Like, you're living in peace, but you're also aware of what's going on in the world, but you're seeing that you can't control everything. That is amazing. And to do that at any age in the society that we live in is a major accomplishment. So, bravo to you. And on that note, that's all this Golden Lightworker has to say. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and let me know if you want me to talk about anything else in the lightworking realm of things, or spirituality, or anything, just even as broad of a concept as fear versus peace, or anything like that. If I haven't already talked about it, I'll be happy to talk about it. And that's all I have left to say. I hope you enjoyed this moment in golden sunshine, and I will see you in the next one. Love and light, beautiful souls.